Hey guys, tonight we step into a world of fjords, snow and shadowed forests, a world where the wind seems to carry whispers of something older than any stone or tree you've ever touched. Imagine the cold bite of a northern winter, the scent of smoke curling from peat fires, and the constant low murmur of human voices, preparing for a season that will test every skill and every ounce of endurance. You probably won't survive this if you think you can simply walk through it as a visitor. This is a land of extremes, where every day is measured in the small victories of warmth, sustenance, and survival. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I want to know where you are right now and what time it is. Leave it in the comments because it will remind us all that even across centuries and continents, someone, somewhere, is listening to the same winds that shaped these people. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. We begin in the early centuries of the first millennium, in the Scandinavian lands that would later be called Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Here, the people we call Norse lived in scattered settlements, often clustered along fjords, river valleys, or near the coasts where fishing was possible. Agriculture was challenging in the northern latitudes. Winters were long, summers short, and the soil was thin and rocky. Most families relied on mixed farming. Barley and rye were the dominant crops, supplemented by oats, peas, and sometimes flax, grown carefully in plots that required meticulous preparation of the cold, hard earth. Cattle, sheep, pigs, and goats provided milk, meat, and hides. Every animal was valuable. Losing even one to illness or misfortune could spell hardship. Daily life was rhythmical, dictated by the seasons. Spring was a time of clearing fields, repairing fences, and preparing tools for planting. Summer brought the frenetic work of sowing, tending crops, and ensuring that livestock had adequate pasturage. Autumn was dominated by harvest, the pressing of butter and cheese, and the preservation of meat by smoking or salting. Winter demanded endurance, foraging, maintaining fires, repairing buildings, weaving cloth, and telling stories to pass the time while daylight hours shrank to barely a few. In these hours, tales of gods, giants, and the unseen forces of the cosmos were not merely entertainment. They were frameworks for understanding life, danger, and destiny. The Norse believed in a cosmos composed of 9 worlds, interconnected and inhabited by various beings. Midgard was the human realm, encircled by the great serpentine world of Jormungandr, while Asgard housed the gods, a realm only accessible through Yggdrasil, the immense world tree whose roots and branches touched every corner of existence. These worlds were not abstract concepts. They were woven into everyday thought. Rituals, sacrifices, and festivals were performed with the expectation that gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya were watching, influencing weather, harvests, health, and fortune. Even a mundane act, cutting wood, mending nets, or milking a goat, could be accompanied by a quiet invocation or a gesture of respect, a reminder that humans were part of a larger, ordered cosmos. In material terms, the Norse lived in longhouses, rectangular structures built of timber with thatched or sod roofs. The interiors were simple. A central hearth provided warmth and cooking facilities. Benches lined the walls, and storage pits or raised platforms held tools, utensils, and seasonal provisions. Smoke often lingered near the ceiling, a permanent haze shaped by the need for warmth and the inefficiency of ventilation. Floors were earthen, occasionally strewn with straw, and the air carried the mingling scents of wood, smoke, and livestock. Each household, often multi-generational, was a microcosm of survival. Men, women, and children shared labor according to age and skill, and every member was essential. Even small tasks like spinning wool or repairing leather were critical. Trade and travel were constant, though hazardous. The Norse were not only raiders in the popular imagination, they were farmers, craftsmen, and merchants. Longships and nars, sleek, sturdy vessels enabled travel along coasts, fjords, and rivers. These ships were marvels of technology for their time, clinker-built with overlapping planks, flexible in rough waters, and capable of carrying cargo or warriors over great distances. Salted fish, furs, and metalwork were common commodities. Winter made travel dangerous. Frozen rivers could allow overland sledging, but storms at sea were ever-present threats. Knowledge of stars, tides, and currents was passed orally, refined through generations. Religion and ritual were tightly interwoven with politics and family life. Chieftains or heads of households presided over local assemblies called things, where disputes were settled, laws recited, and communal decisions made. These gatherings were both civic and religious. Sacrifices might accompany decisions on land, marriage, or justice. Wealth and honor were displayed through feasts, the exchange of gifts, and the construction of burial mounds. Even ordinary farmers could gain prestige through craftsmanship, bravery, or the preservation of oral traditions. The Norse sense of ethics emphasized reciprocity, reputation, and courage, not abstract morality. Life was a practical negotiation between environment, neighbors, and unseen powers. Focusing on mythology, consider Odin, the All-Father. He was not only a war god, but also a seeker of wisdom, known to sacrifice one of his eyes for knowledge. Stories say he hung from Yggdrasil for 9 days and nights to gain the runes, symbols that represented language, magic, and the hidden structure of the universe. These tales would be recited at hearths or assembly halls, sometimes over long winters, when the land seemed dead, but human imagination was alive. Children were taught early that courage, cunning, and respect for forces beyond comprehension mattered more than brute strength alone. Thor, too, was revered, not merely for strength, but for protection of communities from chaotic forces embodied by giants or Jotnar. Every myth had a function: to teach, to warn, to contextualize the struggles of survival. Yet the practical was never far from the mythic. Seasonal festivals, such as Yule or Midsummer, marked agricultural cycles and were imbued with ritual offerings. Families might sacrifice a pig or a portion of grain to secure fertility, safe passage through winter, or protection of livestock. Even ordinary tools or jewelry could carry symbolic value. A finely worked brooch might indicate wealth, skill, or favor from the gods. Craftsmen developed expertise in ironworking, woodworking, and weaving, their labor essential to the household and the community. Every action, whether mundane or ceremonial, contributed to the fabric of life that intertwined human and divine. One of the less obvious but deeply significant aspects of Norse life was the reliance on memory and oral tradition. Few Norse people could read or write. Literacy was rare and largely confined to runes, used for inscriptions on stone, wood, or metal. Stories, laws, genealogies, and navigational knowledge were memorized and transmitted orally. This reliance shaped daily life. Elders instructed children not only in practical tasks, but in reciting poems, remembering family lineages, and understanding social obligations. Forgetting a story could mean losing a piece of identity or legal authority. Thus, every conversation by the hearth, every story shared, was a building block of survival and culture. Seasonal rhythms also dictated social obligations and personal routines. Spring meant checking fences and mending tools. Summer brought long days of tending crops and watching livestock. Autumn required careful preservation of food, and winter, the longest season, demanded planning, patience, and attention to minor details. Even minor errors could have cascading consequences. For instance, failing to properly salt meat in late autumn could lead to winter starvation, while neglecting a roof in summer could cause catastrophic leaks in winter storms. Every action, however small, had repercussions, a reality that reinforced attentiveness and communal cooperation. In all of this, one senses that Norse mythology was not merely a collection of entertaining stories. It was woven into life itself. Rituals, symbols, and legends guided decisions about farming, fishing, warfare, and social hierarchy. Gods and spirits were acknowledged daily, in gestures, words, and observances. Mortals negotiated with the divine through sacrifice, offerings, and observant behavior. Survival, honor, and memory were inseparable from the cosmology in which they lived. And yet, even as we begin this journey, many questions remain unresolved. How did these disparate communities, scattered across harsh landscapes, maintain cohesion and shared belief systems? How did ordinary people reconcile the terrifying aspects of their myths with their practical needs for food, safety, and shelter? And what traces of these practices persisted through centuries of change, migration, and conquest? These are the threads we will begin to unravel as we move deeper into the Norse world, exploring not only gods and heroes, but the very daily acts that made survival, memory, and myth inseparable. As winter recedes slowly from the northern lands, the first hints of thaw touch the soil, darkening fields that have lain dormant beneath snow and frost. The rivers swell with meltwater, and gulls wheel overhead, their cries a constant punctuation against the quiet hum of returning life. In villages scattered along the fjords and inland valleys, the day begins before dawn. The longhouses remain dim and smoky, but the clatter of wooden tools, the low bleating of goats, and the scrape of oars on frozen ice signal activity. Early risers stoke the hearths to life, coaxing smoke to swirl upward through the small vents in thatch or sod, preparing for the labor that the season demands. Men typically begin by inspecting livestock, ensuring that cattle, sheep, pigs, and goats are fed and healthy. Each animal is vital. Milk provides nourishment for children and adults alike. Hides are tanned and preserved for winter clothing, and meat, carefully butchered and salted, is stored for lean months. Animal husbandry is not simply routine. It requires knowledge passed down across generations. Farmers note the condition of hooves, the sheen of coats, and even subtle behavioral changes, for disease could spread quickly, decimating herds. A goat that refuses to eat might indicate a slow fever, a subtle warning that the household must respond immediately. Women's work is equally essential. In spring, they begin repairing cloth from winter wear, weaving new textiles from flax or wool, and tending small gardens of peas, onions, or herbs. Spinning is constant, wool from sheep, flax fibers from retted stalks, all transformed into yarn, ropes, and clothing. Every stitch is both practical and culturally significant. Embroidered patterns sometimes carry symbols invoking protection or good fortune. Water must be drawn from wells or streams, often requiring repeated trips that dominate the first heitusitis. Hours of the day. The smell of damp earth and peat smoke fills the longhouse as chores overlap with childcare, meal preparation, and instruction of young apprentices or siblings. The pace of work is dictated not only by the needs of survival, but also by the changing light. In spring, the days lengthen rapidly, offering perhaps 16 hours of daylight in some northern regions. Labor is scheduled around sunlight. Ploughing fields, repairing ditches, and clearing brush occur during the brightest hours, while spinning, mending, and storytelling occupy the dimmer periods. Meals are simple: porridge made from barley or oats, occasionally sweetened with honey or berries, and salted fish from last season's preservation. These modest foods sustain the laborers, but are also shaped by necessity. Calories matter, but so does preservation for the months when foraging is impossible. Children are integrated into this rhythm early. Boys assist with tending smaller livestock or collecting firewood, while girls help with domestic tasks such as fetching water, tending fires, or aiding in textile work. Play is intertwined with learning. Climbing trees may become practice for scouting or wood gathering, and games with sticks or stones teach coordination, strategy, or strength. Education is primarily practical, oral, and observational. Lessons in mythology are inseparable from these tasks. Children hear tales of Thor felling giants, Odin acquiring wisdom, and Freyja influencing fertility, all while performing work that connects directly to these stories. These myths serve as living instruction, subtly reinforcing moral expectations, cautionary lessons, and social norms. Spring also marks the resumption of trade. Travelers from nearby communities arrive in small boats or on foot, carrying wares like iron tools, furs, salt, or imported goods from more distant lands, including the Baltic or even the British Isles. Exchanges are typically negotiated with care. Quantities of grain or preserved meat for tools, cloth, or jewelry. Trust and reputation are central. The word of a household or chieftain can carry as much weight as any coin. Iron production, in particular, is both highly valued and labor-intensive. Smelting requires careful attention to charcoal quality, furnace temperature, and ore composition. Small errors may ruin an entire batch, demonstrating the interdependence of human skill and environmental knowledge. Seasonal preparations also demand strategic foresight. Farmers prune fruit trees, repair sod roofs, and reinforce fences in anticipation of storms. Men and women alike monitor weather patterns. Early snow, frost, or unseasonal rainfall can drastically affect planting and the survival of livestock. Tools are checked, sharpened, and sometimes replaced. A plowshare, cracked or dull, might delay planting by days, with cascading consequences for the harvest. Even minor equipment failures. An oar snapped while transporting goods, a sickle that misses a stalk, carry practical significance. These small attentions to detail are the margin between subsistence and hardship. In the same period, religious observances remain intertwined with labor. Offerings might be made to gods before plowing begins, small rituals performed at natural features like rivers, stones, or groves. Thor's protection is invoked to shield the fields from frost or hail. Freyja is petitioned for fertility and the health of animals. Odin may be acknowledged for wisdom in resolving disputes or navigating trade. These observances, while outwardly brief, reinforce a worldview in which human effort is inseparable from cosmic influence. Even simple gestures, a splash of water on the ground, a grain placed on a threshold, carry significance. Craftsmanship continues alongside agriculture. Blacksmiths work in small forges, heating iron to malleable temperatures before hammering it into blades, nails, or household implements. Woodworkers carve and assemble tools, furniture, or ship components. Leather workers tan hides for clothing, shoes, and bags. Each step requires skill honed over years, often within the household, but sometimes shared across the community in exchange of knowledge or labor. Apprenticeships are common. A young boy may spend years observing his father or a village craftsman, gradually taking on more complex tasks. Communication between settlements remains critical but slow. Messages often travel by boat, horse, or foot, relayed through a chain of intermediaries. Knowledge of weather, political developments, or impending threats can determine survival. While this might seem mundane, the consequences are profound. An unheeded warning of flooding, a dispute over grazing rights, or delayed coordination for communal hunting can disrupt entire communities. Record-keeping is primarily oral. Sagas, genealogies, and local histories are memorized and recited, preserving identity and legal precedent. Life is punctuated by festivals, both seasonal and ceremonial. Yule in midwinter celebrates the return of the sun, a period of feasting and ritual. Summer solstice is observed with sacrifices and offerings intended to secure fertility of crops and livestock. Funerary customs involve burial mounds or ship burials for wealthier individuals, while ordinary families may mark graves with stones or wooden markers. These practices embody both reverence and practicality, honoring ancestors, reinforcing social cohesion, and asserting claims to land or lineage. Even the smallest households participate, reinforcing the shared culture that links disparate communities across the northern landscapes. Despite these patterns, uncertainties abound. Harvests may fail, disease may strike, or storms may destroy carefully preserved stores. Mythology reflects this uncertainty. The tales of Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the world, are not just entertainment but symbolic acknowledgement of the fragility of existence. Mortals are reminded that survival requires constant effort, attentiveness, and respect for forces beyond human control. In many ways, this worldview shapes every act, every calculation, and every relationship within the community. Travel and exploration remain intertwined with economic and social needs. Traders may venture along coasts or inland rivers to exchange goods, and warriors might journey to assert influence or secure wealth. Knowledge of navigation is precise, combining observation of the sun, stars, wind patterns, and tides. These skills are critical for survival. Failure can mean shipwreck, starvation, or confrontation with hostile groups. Communities maintain networks of alliances and obligations that ensure mutual aid, whether for trade, defense, or collective labor during harvest or construction projects. Daily life is thus a web of interdependent routines. Each household balances work, observation, ritual, and teaching. The seasons dictate rhythms, but within these rhythms, flexibility and foresight are required. Success depends on attention to minute details: how a roof is repaired, how livestock are tended, how a tool is sharpened. Ordinary acts carry cumulative importance, shaping the fortunes of individuals, families, and entire communities. Mythology, far from abstract, provides context for these tasks, embedding daily labor within a moral and cosmological framework. And yet, even with these careful preparations, one wonders, how did the Norse reconcile the capriciousness of weather, the threat of disease, and the inevitability of debt, with their structured worldview? How did communities adapt when circumstances defied expectation, when harvests failed or trade faltered? And how did the interplay between myth, ritual, and mundane labor shape the decisions that ensured survival, reputation, and legacy across generations? These questions linger, unresolved, as we follow the cycle of Norse life into the warmth and trials of summer. Summer arrives in the northern latitudes with a subtle shift of light and warmth. Dawn stretches longer, creeping across fjords and river valleys, illuminating pastures where cattle graze, and small gardens yield peas, onions, and herbs. Bees hum busily around wildflowers and cultivated clover, their activities signaling the intensifying work for humans as well. For the Norse, summer is a season of both abundance and constant vigilance. Crops must be nurtured and harvested carefully, livestock tended meticulously, and water sources monitored to ensure they remain uncontaminated and sufficient. Every day presents a delicate balance between the richness of growth and the ever-present risks of spoilage, predation, and disease. Men spend hours in fields and pastures. Ploughing, sowing, weeding, and harvesting occupy the bulk of daylight. Tools, simple yet essential, are maintained constantly. Ploughshares sharpened, hoes straightened, sickles checked for integrity. Ironworking continues as a complementary labor. A blacksmith hammers and tempers metal to produce nails, blades, and ferrules. These objects are critical to both agriculture and household management. A broken plough or dull sickle could mean days of delay, jeopardizing an entire harvest. Attention to such small but vital details is ingrained into every household routine. Women coordinate domestic activities and oversee food preservation. Milk from goats and cows is transformed into butter, cheese, or buttermilk. Surplus grain is ground into flour and stored. Fruit and berries are gathered, dried, or fermented. Meat is salted or smoked in preparation for the long winter months. Clothing, woven on looms from wool or flax, is repaired, dyed, and stored with care. The scent of smoke from peat fires mingles with the earthy aroma of drying hay and herbs, creating a persistent olfactory reminder of human presence and labor. Within the natural landscape, children continue to participate actively. Boys and girls assist in harvesting, carrying small loads, or gathering firewood. They learn not only practical skills but also the names and purposes of plants, animals, and tools. This knowledge is inseparable from local myth. A child carrying a basket of herbs may be reminded of Freya's influence over fertility and growth. A boy tending goats may recall tales of Thor protecting Midgard from giants. These narratives are practical in a subtle sense. They reinforce vigilance, attentiveness, and an understanding of cause and consequence. Myths in this way are not merely stories. They are embedded lessons on risk, care, and survival. Trade during summer peaks due to navigable waters. Fjords, rivers, and coastal waters are busy with small craft, nars and longships ferrying furs, salted fish, timber, and metal goods. Travel remains risky, with weather capable of shifting abruptly. Navigational skills are crucial. Observation of the sun, stars, tides, and wind patterns is the difference between reaching a trading partner safely or being stranded on a rocky coastline. Communities maintain detailed oral knowledge of safe harbors, tidal currents, and seasonal winds, often passing this information down for generations. Mistakes can be fatal, which reinforces the importance of apprenticeship and careful attention. Summer also includes ritual and religious observance. Seasonal sacrifices and offerings are common, often directed at securing continued fertility for crops and livestock. Thor is petitioned to protect against storms, Freya for prosperity, and lesser spirits of land and water for everyday safety. Even minor gestures, placing grain at a threshold, offering a portion of milk to a standing stone, carry significance. Such practices reflect a worldview in which human effort and divine favor are intertwined. Failure to observe these rituals may not result in immediate catastrophe, but the cumulative effect of neglect is believed to invite misfortune, reinforcing the integration of belief and labor. As summer wanes into autumn, attention turns to storage and preparation. Grain is harvested, threshed and stored in pits or bins, carefully monitored for moisture and pest infestation. Smokehouses are cleaned and meat is prepared for long-term preservation. Fencing is inspected and repaired in anticipation of winter snow and wandering predators. Firewood is split, stacked and dried, ensuring sufficient supply for cooking and warmth. The pace of work remains unrelenting, but the urgency of preparation is heightened by the knowledge that miscalculations now could mean starvation in the months ahead. Craftsmanship continues alongside these preparations. Blacksmiths produce additional tools and repair household implements. Leatherworkers tan hides and fashion shoes, belts and bags, ensuring that clothing and equipment will withstand winter conditions. Weaving and spinning are intensified to produce warm garments for every member of the household. Woodworkers construct or repair sleds, fences and boats, anticipating both local needs and the possibility of trade. The interdependence of labor, materials and environment is visible everywhere. Failure in one domain can ripple across multiple aspects of life. Communities coordinate labor through assemblies and informal agreements. Decisions about grazing, wood collection, or cooperative construction projects require negotiation, often framed by local customs or laws remembered orally. Disputes are mediated by chieftains or elders, whose authority rests on both experience and reputation. Legal and social norms are reinforced through storytelling and ritual, ensuring that agreements are respected and obligations honored. Even routine negotiations, who may collect firewood from a particular forest, or who is responsible for a communal fence, carry social weight, binding households into networks of mutual accountability. Despite these measures, the Norse remain vulnerable. Seas can sweep through livestock or people, storms can damage crops or ships, and misfortune can strike in ways that human foresight cannot prevent. Mythology reflects this tension. Stories of Ragnarok, the foretold destruction of gods and humans alike, remind mortals that existence is contingent, fragile, and uncertain. Human labor, ritual, and skill provide temporary order, but the unpredictability of nature is a constant companion. Awareness of this fragility is not paralyzing, it is instructive. Norse society cultivates resilience through redundancy, shared knowledge, and skill transmission across generations. Autumn, in particular, is a season of both reflection and urgent activity. The harvest is evaluated, grain is measured and stored, and surplus goods may be exchanged or gifted to allies. Livestock is culled or moved to sheltered pastures. Tools are checked, repaired, or replaced. Water sources are secured. Fires in longhouses burn longer, and the preparation for winter intensifies. In this time, storytelling assumes a heightened role. tales of gods and heroes are recounted as both entertainment and caution, reminding listeners of mortality, courage, and foresight. These narratives maintain social cohesion while reinforcing practical and moral knowledge. Even as the physical labor peaks, subtle cultural and spiritual work continues. Runes are carved, often inscribed on tools, jewelry, or simple markers. Small charms and tokens may be made to safeguard household members during the approaching winter. Seasonal festivals provide a framework for communal celebration, reinforcing shared beliefs, social bonds, and collective resilience. These events punctuate the rhythm of labor, offering moments of rest, reflection, and ritual acknowledgement of forces beyond human control. Yet the Norse world remains precarious. Even the best-laid plans cannot fully guard against the caprices of weather, disease, or conflict. Winter looms always on the horizon, bringing the potential for scarcity, isolation, and hardship. Communities anticipate these risks with painstaking preparation, but uncertainty is never eliminated. In this context, mythology and ritual are not merely symbolic, they are integral to daily planning, reinforcing vigilance, social bonds, and adaptive strategies. And so, as autumn draws to a close, questions arise that are not easily answered. How do communities maintain cohesion when resources are strained, or when misfortune strikes unexpectedly? How do families reconcile reliance on ritual with the necessity of practical action? How do myths, told and retold through generations, shape decisions that determine life and death? These questions remain unresolved, hanging like mist over the fjords, preparing the stage for the harsh demands and quiet resilience of winter, which we will explore. Winter descends on the northern lands with a quiet severity, blanketing fjords, valleys, and forests in snow and ice. The sun hangs low in the sky, its light pale and fleeting, casting long shadows over fields now dormant and pastures empty of grazing livestock. In longhouses, the central hearth burns continuously, a lifeline of heat, comfort, and sustenance. Smoke curls toward the low ceilings, mingling with the scent of burning peat, dried herbs, and stored provisions. Outside, the wind howls over frozen rivers and lakes, reminding inhabitants that their survival hinges on preparation, skill, and endurance. Life in winter is both predictable and precarious. With daylight limited, most labor shifts indoors. Men repair tools, sharpen blades, and construct household implements or small furniture. Woodworkers craft sleds, skis, and utensils. Blacksmiths maintain and repair ironwork. Women focus on spinning, weaving, and sewing, producing garments to withstand the months of cold. Children continue to participate, learning practical skills, memorizing sagas, and observing the rhythms of household life. Even play is instructional, teaching coordination, resilience, and cooperation in an environment where physical and mental acuity are essential. Food management becomes paramount. Salted fish, smoked meat, dried grains, and stored dairy products constitute the primary diet. Milk from goats or cows, when available, is carefully rationed. Butter and cheese provide concentrated nutrition. Grain-based porridges remain staple meals, often flavored with honey, berries, or herbs. Every morsel is accounted for, as spoilage or overconsumption can have severe consequences. Communal sharing occurs, but households largely rely on their own preparation. Failure to manage stores effectively can result in malnutrition, illness, or even death during the harshest weeks of winter. Social and communal life continues despite the harsh conditions. Assemblies or informal gatherings persist, often indoors, where disputes are mediated, plans for spring coordinated, and laws recited. Oral tradition remains central. Elders recount genealogies, local histories, and sagas that encode moral and practical lessons. These narratives are not mere entertainment. They reinforce collective memory, social cohesion, and cultural identity. Even as harsh weather isolates settlements physically, these shared stories preserve connection and continuity. Ritual and belief play a constant role. Offerings are made to gods and spirits for protection against illness, misfortune, or injury. Simple gestures, placing a piece of bread near a household altar, hanging a charm above a doorway, invoking Thor or Freya in casual conversation, demonstrate the pervasiveness of religious consciousness. Winter festivals, such as Yule, bring communities together, reinforcing both spiritual and social bonds. Feasts include preserved meats, dairy, and seasonal ales, marking the return of light and providing opportunities for exchange of news, gossip, and guidance. Even in the quiet monotony of daily survival, ritual embeds meaning into otherwise repetitive labor. Winter also emphasizes the unpredictability and danger inherent in northern life. Snowstorms, frozen rivers, and ice hazards can isolate communities for days or weeks. Sickness spreads more easily indoors, especially among those living in close quarters with livestock. Injuries sustained during tool repair, chopping wood, or hunting can have lasting consequences in the absence of skilled care. Navigation, trade, and travel become increasingly hazardous, making careful observation, preparation, and respect for environmental limits vital. Mythology underscores these risks. Stories of giants, trickster gods, and cataclysmic events serve as metaphors for the uncontrollable forces of nature. Within households, routines are finely tuned to conserve energy, maintain warmth, and ensure survival. Hearths are managed carefully, with peat and wood allocated to sustain heat throughout long nights. Bedding is layered with straw and hides. Clothing is layered and repaired constantly. Knowledge of insulation, ventilation, and fire management is passed orally. A mismanaged hearth could cause smoke inhalation, frostbite from insufficient warmth, or accidental fire. Each action is meaningful, measured, and deliberate. Beyond domestic concerns, some Norse individuals continue exploratory, trading, or martial activities even in winter. Short sea voyages are undertaken along coasts when conditions permit, delivering critical goods such as salt, iron, or timber. Knowledge of ice formation, tide behavior, and wind direction is essential. These journeys are dangerous, yet necessary, sustaining the economic and social networks that underpin survival across dispersed communities. Even in the worst conditions, navigation, skill, and reputation are intertwined. Education continues through storytelling, craft demonstration, and observation. Children are taught the names of plants, tools, animals, and celestial markers. They memorize sagas, genealogies, and practical instructions for labor. Knowledge transmission is intensive. The margin for error is small. Every generation relies on the accumulation of experience, observation, and oral tradition to persist in a landscape that offers both bounty and peril. In this way, the cycle of life, work, and ritual is preserved through careful attention to detail and the cultural embedding of knowledge. Reflection on Norse mythology. Within this seasonal rhythm reveals its practical dimension. Tales of Odin's quest for wisdom, Thor's battles with giants, and Freya's control over fertility do not merely entertain. They provide interpretives, frameworks for understanding the unpredictable environment. Storms, illness, famine, and conflict are explained, ritualized, and mitigated through action and observance. Mythology is inseparable from labor, from the marking of seasons, and from social cohesion. Even mundane tasks, sharpening a blade, tending livestock, preparing stores, are performed with the implicit acknowledgement of unseen forces, creating a sense of order and agency within a volatile world. As winter stretches on, it becomes clear that survival depends on foresight, discipline, and communal cooperation. Longhouses are hubs of interdependent labor, knowledge, and ritual. Each individual contributes to a network of sustenance, men with tools and transport, women with textiles and food preparation, children with observation and assistance. The integration of labor and belief creates a social fabric resilient enough to endure environmental and economic stresses. These patterns are repeated year after year, generation after generation, shaping both identity and historical continuity. Looking back across the seasonal cycles, from the first thaw of spring through the labor-intensive summer and autumn, one appreciates the depth of preparation, skill, and knowledge required for survival. Norse communities were deeply attuned to their environment, embedding ritual, myth, and oral tradition into the practical tasks of daily life. Tools, clothing, shelters, and food storage were not simply utilitarian. They were expressions of accumulated wisdom, experience, and cultural continuity. Social structures, assemblies, and cooperative labor reinforced stability and ensured survival in an environment defined by extremes. The legacy of these practices persists in subtle ways. Archaeological remains of longhouses, tools, and burial mounds reveal the material sophistication of Norse communities. Sagas, runic inscriptions, and oral histories preserve social, legal, and ethical norms. The blending of daily labor with ritual and myth provides insight into the worldview of the Norse. Survival was never simply physical, but also moral, social, and spiritual. Practices honed over centuries allowed communities to endure climatic challenges, maintain social cohesion, and transmit knowledge across generations. And so, the winter closes this chapter, both literally and metaphorically. The patterns of life, labor, and belief, springing from mundane necessity, seasonal cycles, and mythic imagination, demonstrate a society in which survival and culture are inseparable. Every act, from ploughing a field to telling a saga, participates in a continuum of human adaptation, resilience, and meaning. As we prepare to move into the next story, we carry forward an understanding of the Norse not as legendary warriors alone, but as attentive, skillful, and thoughtful people navigating a harsh and demanding world, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inform our understanding of history and human ingenuity. As the frost of the long winter fades and the first green of spring reappears across the fjords, communities that survived the harsh northern cycles begin to look outward, beyond their immediate valleys and longhouse clusters. The skills honed in survival, navigation, resource management, social negotiation, and craft prepare some families and communities to venture farther afield, seeking new land, trade opportunities, and resources. These ventures will lay the foundation for patterns of expansion, settlement, and maritime enterprise that define the next chapter of Norse life. In this era, settlements remain relatively small and dispersed, often numbering just a few dozen individuals. Yet, the geographic scope is notable. River valleys, coastal fjords, and sheltered bays allow for agriculture, fishing, and travel. Communities are still largely self-sufficient, but interaction with neighbors, through trade, marriage alliances, and occasional conflict, is increasing. Knowledge of the surrounding terrain is precise: which streams provide fresh water, which forests supply timber suitable for construction, which bays offer protection from prevailing winds. These observations are passed down orally, with an emphasis on accuracy, because mistakes can mean injury, crop failure, or lost resources. Daily routines remain rooted in survival and seasonal cycles. Spring brings field preparation, livestock care, and repair of buildings and tools. Men are responsible for heavier labor: ploughing, clearing land, and constructing boats or sleds. Women oversee domestic and agricultural production, tending gardens, spinning and weaving textiles, processing dairy, and preserving meat and fish. Children continue to assist with chores while absorbing practical knowledge and oral history. Education remains hands-on and embedded in labor. A boy who helps sharpen tools also learns the names of etals and their sources, while a girl weaving wool may memorize local genealogies or the seasonal order of agricultural tasks. Trade and mobility are increasingly significant. Seasonal fairs attract travelers from different regions, offering opportunities to exchange surplus goods: furs, salted fish, timber, tools, and occasionally imported metals or luxury items. Trade networks are supported by small boats, nars for cargo, and longships for speed and agility. Even local exchanges require knowledge of tides, winds, and safe harbors. Communities maintain detailed oral charts of coastlines, riverways, and tidal patterns, transmitted carefully from one generation to the next. Errors in navigation could result in shipwreck, loss of goods, or fatal accidents. Agriculture is adapted to local conditions. Soil is often thin and rocky, so fields are rotated and enriched with manure. Crops, primarily barley, oats, and rye, are supplemented by legumes, vegetables, and herbs. Livestock graze pastures carefully managed to avoid overuse. Seasonal patterns govern labor: planting in spring, maintenance and irrigation in summer, harvesting and preservation in autumn, and tending animals and repairing equipment in winter. Even small failures, an unevenly ploughed field, poorly stored grain, can threaten the household's survival. Fishing is both subsistence and trade. Communities rely on coastal and riverine species: cod, herring, salmon, and shellfish. Nets, traps, hooks, and lines require careful maintenance and skillful use. Preservation methods, drying, smoking, or salting, allow fish to be stored for months. Seasonal migration patterns of fish are memorized, and knowledge of currents and tides is critical for successful harvesting. Fishing is often communal. Small teams coordinate in shallow bays, sharing the catch according to custom and necessity. Craftsmanship is central to both daily life and commerce. Blacksmiths produce tools, nails, and weapons. Woodworkers craft furniture, sleds, boat components, and household implements. Leather workers create shoes, belts, bags, and harnesses. Spinners and weavers maintain the supply of textiles, essential for clothing, trade, and ritual purposes. Skills are transmitted through apprenticeship, observation, and participation. Mastery requires years of consistent practice, careful attention to material properties, and an understanding of environmental influences. Temperature, humidity, and seasonal variation affect the quality of work. Social organization extends beyond the household. Local assemblies or things provide forums for dispute resolution, law recitation, and planning communal projects. Chieftains or elders preside over these gatherings, their authority rooted in reputation, experience, and demonstrated skill. Social cohesion depends on mutual obligation. Cooperation during harvest, defense against threats, shared labor for construction, and collective management of grazing and forests. Oral law and customary practice guide behavior, emphasizing reciprocity, honor, and reliability. Religion continues to shape daily experience. Gods, spirits, and ancestral forces are acknowledged through ritual offerings and gestures. Thor, Odin, Freya, and Freya remain central, influencing agriculture, health, protection, and fertility. Rituals may be small, placing grain at a boundary stone, or larger, communal sacrifices marking seasonal transitions. Mythology provides interpretive frameworks. Weather events, disease, and accidents are contextualized as interactions between human effort and cosmic forces. Even routine actions, mending a net, tending animals, building a boat, carry implicit acknowledgement of these unseen powers. The maritime dimension of Norse life is particularly notable in this period. Coastal and river navigation require expertise in boat handling, wind and tide prediction, and knowledge of hazards such as rocks, reefs, and shifting sandbanks. Longships, sleek and flexible, allow rapid movement, raiding, or travel to distant markets. Cargo vessels, or nars, transport bulk goods, relying on both sail and oar. Boat construction demands collaboration. Timbers must be sourced, shaped, and fastened with iron nails or rivets, the hull planked carefully to withstand both calm and stormy seas. A failed vessel can imperil both lives and livelihoods, highlighting the intertwining of craft, labor, and environmental knowledge. Even in seemingly mundane acts, risk is present. Winter ice may break underfoot during inland travel. Livestock can be lost to predators or illness. Crop failure, fire, or spoiled food can threaten the household. The stories of gods and giants serve as cultural tools to teach vigilance, caution, and respect for forces beyond human control. Tales of Thor striking giants or Odin seeking wisdom are not only entertainment, but codified lessons in foresight, resilience, and strategy. Practical knowledge and mythology operate together, shaping decision-making and behavior in ways that support survival and social stability. As communities expand, they encounter new lands, environments, and peoples. Settlement often requires negotiation, adaptation, and careful management of resources. Land clearing, soil preparation, and water access are labor-intensive tasks. Environmental observation informs planting schedules, livestock management, and risk mitigation. Communities may engage in seasonal movement, shifting livestock to summer pastures and returning to sheltered areas in winter. These cycles reinforce knowledge of the environment, interdependence within the group, and the need for careful, planned action over ties. Even in expansion, oral tradition remains critical. Elders recount genealogies, histories of settlement, and lessons derived from past experiences. These narratives preserve collective memory and provide guidance for decisions regarding land, trade, and defense. Knowledge of tides, winds, soil types, and plant cycles is encoded in stories as much as in direct instruction, reinforcing both practical and social learning. Young members of the community internalize these lessons through repetition, observation, and participation in labor and ritual. Despite preparation and skill, unpredictability remains. Storms, disease, and accidents can undo careful planning. Social and ecological systems are interdependent and fragile. Myths provide a framework for understanding uncertainty, while ritual and social cohesion provide mechanisms for managing risk. Communities learn to anticipate challenges, distribute labor, and maintain networks of obligation and cooperation. These strategies are not formalized in writing, but embedded in daily practice, apprenticeship, and communal memory. And yet, even as settlements expand and trade routes extend, questions remain unresolved. How do these communities negotiate relationships with distant neighbors? How do they adapt to environmental changes or unexpected scarcity? How do mythology, ritual, and labor continue to reinforce cohesion and survival in new contexts? These questions linger, shaping the choices and actions that will define the next stage of Norse maritime and settlement life to be explored. Spring arrives once more in the northern reaches, and with it, a renewed sense of urgency across Norse settlements. Snow melts gradually from the fjords, revealing rocky shores, sandbanks, and tidal flats. Rivers swell with meltwater, creating channels that both facilitate and complicate travel. Communities that have survived winter must now repair longhouses, rebuild fences, and prepare fields for planting. Boats are inspected and repaired, planks fastened, oars straightened, sails mended. The timing of each task is crucial because delays can cascade into lost harvests or missed trading opportunities. Men undertake the heavier labor first. Ploughing begins in the softening soil, using simple yet effective wooden ploughs tipped with iron. Livestock is tended. Sheep and goats are moved to new pastures, pigs and cattle checked for health. Hunting may continue, supplementing domestic food stores with venison, fowl, or wild fish. Hunters rely on knowledge of local terrain, animal behavior, and seasonal patterns. Every decision carries risk. Poor judgment can result in injury, lost game, or weakened livestock. Men also oversee repairs to communal infrastructure. Bridges, dikes, and docks require attention to ensure access to trade and safe movement of goods. Women's responsibilities complement these efforts. Gardens must be prepared and planted, herbs tended, and crops watered or protected from early pests. Milk from goats and cows is processed into butter and cheese, and surplus milk may be fermented or stored in sealed containers to last into the summer. Food preservation continues year-round, with emphasis on storage techniques that mitigate spoilage. Women also manage textiles, spinning wool and flax, weaving cloth, repairing garments, and preparing clothing for trade or ceremonial use. These activities are both practical and deeply tied to cultural knowledge. Encoded it. Pattern, material choice, and oral instruction. Children continue to assist in domestic, agricultural, and craft work. Boys may accompany fathers in river or coastal travel, learning navigation, fish behavior, and boat handling. Girls may participate in weaving or food preparation, memorizing seasonal patterns and household management. Education is embedded in action. Observation, imitation, and guided practice transmit essential knowledge. Stories and myths are interwoven with work, teaching caution, foresight, and skill. Thor's protection, Odin's wisdom, and Freya's fertility are acknowledged in both ritual and practical acts, ensuring that daily labor aligns with spiritual understanding. Trade resumes with the arrival of warmer months. Coastal settlements become hubs of exchange, with nars carrying furs, salted fish, timber, and tools to distant markets. Traders navigate fjords, riverways, and open coastlines, relying on intimate knowledge of currents, tides, and wind patterns. Trade routes may extend hundreds of kilometers, connecting disparate communities in networks that are both economic and social. Information, news, genealogical records, or knowledge of environmental hazards travels alongside goods, reinforcing relationships and obligations between settlements. Shipbuilding and maintenance are central to this maritime economy. Planks are shaped from local timber, joined with iron nails or wooden rivets. Hulls are reinforced to withstand waves, ice, and storms. Sailcloth must be inspected and repaired. Oars carved to fit precisely into thole pins. Communities often pool resources for boat construction, understanding that a seaworthy vessel benefits both trade and defense. Mistakes can be costly. A poorly constructed hull or leaky sail may result in lost cargo, injury, or death. Skills are transmitted orally and through apprenticeship, emphasizing the relationship between material knowledge, environmental awareness, and human ingenuity. Agriculture, though labor-intensive, is synchronized with maritime schedules. Fields are planted and maintained around tidal patterns, ensuring access to transport and delivery of goods. Crops include barley, rye, oats, legumes, and flax, rotated and fertilized to optimize yield. Livestock grazing is coordinated with water access and seasonal growth, requiring detailed knowledge of pastures, soil, and weather. Winter stores are planned in advance, ensuring that surplus crops and animal products support households during months when travel and foraging are limited. Ritual and belief intersect with labor at every stage. Offerings to Thor, Freyr, and Freyja are made before ploughing, planting, or traveling. Small gestures, grain placed on thresholds, milk poured near boundary stones, or a piece of cloth offered to a sacred tree, reflect a worldview in which human effort and divine favor are inseparable. Seasonal festivals reinforce communal cohesion and provide markers for labor cycles. Even small-scale rituals signal recognition of environmental hazards, social obligations, and the moral framework that guides conduct. Fishing remains vital. Coastal settlements coordinate net and line placement, monitoring seasonal migration patterns. Preservation methods, smoking, salting, or drying, ensure fish last through the summer and into winter. Fishing is both subsistence and trade. Surplus is exchanged for tools, textiles, or iron goods. Knowledge of currents, tides, and seasonal fish behavior is essential. Failures can disrupt household provisioning or trade obligations. Boats, skills, and coordination among multiple households are critical to ensure success. Craftsmanship continues alongside agricultural and maritime work. Blacksmiths repair tools and produce nails, fittings, and small household implements. Woodworkers carve furniture, sleds, and boat components. Leatherworkers prepare clothing, harnesses, and storage pouches. Textiles crafted by spinning and weaving are repaired or produced for trade. Apprenticeship and observation are central, as skills are often passed orally or by demonstration rather than through written instruction. The integration of craft, labor, and survival underscores the interdependence of human effort and environmental conditions. Community governance remains active. Assemblies, or things, convene to resolve disputes, plan communal projects, and manage trade or defense. Chieftains or elders preside, their authority rooted in reputation, skill, and experience. Social cohesion depends on mutual obligation, assistance during harvest, maintenance of shared infrastructure, and coordination of defense or trade. Law, custom, and ritual are intertwined, guiding behavior and sustaining collective resilience. Even in times of relative abundance, unpredictability persists. Storms, disease, crop failure, and accidents can undermine careful planning. Oral tradition, myths, and ritual provide frameworks for interpreting and mitigating these uncertainties. Stories of gods, giants, and heroes encode lessons in foresight, caution, and problem-solving. Mythology is not mere entertainment. It informs decision-making, shapes social behavior, and reinforces the adaptive strategies that sustain survival. As the season progresses, attention shifts toward preparation for the coming autumn. Surplus crops are harvested, preserved, and stored. Livestock is culled or moved to sheltered areas. Tools and boats are inspected and repaired. Clothing and textiles are mended or reinforced. Rituals mark transitions, maintaining awareness of cosmic forces and social cohesion. Even minor errors, missed repairs, poorly stored grain, or misjudged tides can have cascading consequences, emphasizing the importance of vigilance and skill, yet questions remain unresolved. How do expanding trade networks affect the social dynamics of settlements? How do communities balance mobility, risk, and cohesion? How does the integration of mythology, ritual, and labor evolve as settlements interact with new environments and peoples? These uncertainties linger, shaping choices, strategies, and the rhythms of life that will continue into the next stage of Norse maritime and settlement activity to be explored. As summer wanes, the northern sun begins its gradual retreat, signaling the approach of autumn and the pressing need for careful planning. Fjords and rivers remain navigable, but the light shortens daily, and the first hints of frost touch the highlands. For Norse communities, this is a critical period. Fields must be harvested, livestock tended, tools and boats repaired, and storage prepared for the months when frost and ice will dominate both landscape and life. Attention to detail is essential, for even minor oversights can compound into serious consequences. Men focus on the final stages of harvest and the preparation of winter fodder. Grain is reaped, threshed, and stored in pits or bins, often lined with straw to protect against moisture. Hay and other fodder are collected from pastures and meadows, carefully stacked to ensure that livestock will have adequate nutrition during long winters. Animal health is monitored closely. Any signs of disease or weakness may prompt early culling, isolation, or other interventions. Knowledge of animal behavior, seasonal patterns, and the microclimate of pastures is essential, as a sudden frost or unexpected storm can quickly devastate herds. Women continue domestic work while intensifying food preservation and textile production. Milk, butter, and cheese are stored, surplus grains and legumes dried or fermented. Meat is salted, smoked, or hung in smokehouses. Spinning and weaving reach a peak, producing warm clothing, household textiles, and items for trade. Apprentices, typically children, are carefully supervised, learning not only the mechanics of work, but also the rationale behind timing, preservation techniques, and quality standards. Skill transmission is deliberate and meticulous, as failure to maintain standards can imperil survival through winter. Fishing continues where possible, although seasonal patterns shift. Almond run upriver. Herring schools migrate along coasts, and shellfish are gathered at low tide. Preservation remains paramount, requiring drying, smoking, or salting in preparation for storage. Coastal knowledge, tidal timing, currents, and safe harbors remains essential. Fishing is often coordinated among multiple households, ensuring sufficient catch while mitigating competition for limited resources. Mistakes in timing or technique can result in significant shortfalls, emphasizing the interplay of observation, experience, and labor. Ship maintenance remains critical, especially as winter storms approach. Knarrs and longships are inspected, planks tightened, hulls caulked, sails repaired, and oars checked for cracks. Boats are sometimes moved to sheltered areas or hauled onto shore for protection. Communities understand that maritime survival depends as much on preparation as skill. A poorly maintained vessel may fail under high winds or ice-laden waters. Knowledge of environmental indicators, Wind shifts, early ice formation, tidal patterns is passed orally and tested through experience, ensuring readiness for both trade and local travel. Ritual and mythology continue to inform daily action. Offerings to gods, spirits, and ancestors are integrated with labor and decision-making. Grain may be placed at boundaries, small portions of milk poured near standing stones, and fire maintained in hearths for both warmth and ritual significance. Thor, Odin, Freya, and Freya are invoked for protection, wisdom, fertility, and guidance. Seasonal festivals mark transitions, reinforcing communal cohesion, maintaining awareness of environmental cycles, and providing cultural context for labor. Mythology functions as both interpretive framework and practical guide, shaping decisions at every scale. Craftsmanship continues alongside agricultural and maritime work. Blacksmiths produce nails, fittings, and tools essential for both household and communal labor. Woodworkers repair boats, sleds, and implements. Leatherworkers maintain clothing and harnesses. Spinning and weaving produce textiles both for domestic use and for trade. Each step requires careful observation. Humidity, temperature, and timing influence both quality and durability. Apprenticeship remains central, ensuring skills are passed accurately across generations. Even minor failures, an incorrectly treated hide, a poorly carved plank, a miswoven textile, can have disproportionate consequences in the harsh northern environment. Social governance remains active and essential. Assemblies convene to address disputes, plan communal projects, and coordinate shared resources. Chieftains or elders preside, mediating based on custom, reputation, and experience. Cooperation is critical. Fields may be harvested collectively, boats launched in coordinated efforts, and defense or trade organized at the community level. Oral law and memory underpin these decisions, guiding behavior and maintaining cohesion. Even minor lapses in cooperation, neglecting shared obligations, misreporting supplies, or violating customary law, can disrupt the delicate balance of survival. Environmental challenges intensify in late autumn. Frost, rain, and early snow can damage crops, impede travel, and stress livestock. Predators may become more active, scavenging weakened or unprotected animals. Storms threaten boats in harbors, washed-out roads impede movement, and ice begins to form on rivers, affecting both travel and fishing. Communities respond through constant observation, flexible labor allocation, and contingency planning. The margin for error is narrow, and the costs of misjudgment are high. Myths provide cultural guidance. Tale: tales of Thor battling giants, Odin seeking knowledge, and Freyja influencing fertility serve as cautionary exemplars of foresight, resilience, and adaptation. Children continue to learn through observation and participation, often under careful supervision. Boys may accompany fathers in late-season hunting or boat maintenance, learning environmental cues, navigation, and risk assessment. Girls may assist with final textile production, food preservation, and household organization. Oral narratives are woven into these activities. Genealogy, myth, and seasonal knowledge are transmitted alongside technical skill. This method ensures that knowledge accumulates, adapts, and persists across generations, providing the foundation for future resilience. Trade and mobility, though more limited in late autumn, remain crucial. Surplus goods are transported to neighboring settlements or stored for winter exchange. Knowledge of seasonal weather patterns, tidal shifts, and river conditions informs timing and route selection. Coordination among multiple households and settlements is required to ensure safety and maximize efficiency. The interdependence of communities is apparent. Resources, skills, and information circulate within networks that extend beyond immediate settlements, reinforcing both economic and social stability. Despite careful preparation, uncertainty persists. Winter will soon arrive, bringing short days, snow, and frozen waterways. Households must anticipate potential shortfalls in food, fuel, and materials. Mistakes or unforeseen events can have cascading consequences. Social and ecological systems are finely balanced, with survival dependent on observation, skill, cooperation, and timely action. Mythology provides interpretive frameworks for understanding these uncertainties, while ritual provides both moral and practical reinforcement of vigilance and foresight. And yet, even as communities prepare for the impending season, questions remain unresolved. How will settlements manage unforeseen shortages or disasters? How will trade and maritime activity adapt to increasing environmental risk? How do myth, ritual, and practical knowledge continue to guide decision-making when circumstances challenge traditional patterns? These questions hover in the collective consciousness of Norse communities, shaping the strategies and behaviors that will define their experience in the approaching winter and beyond. Leading naturally, winter arrives with familiar severity across the fjords and river valleys, blanketing the landscape in snow and ice. Light grows scarce, lasting only a few hours each day, and the sun remains low, casting long shadows over frozen fields, lakes, and coastal bays. In longhouses, the central hearth burns continuously, a source of both warmth and sustenance. Smoke curls toward low ceilings, mingling with the scent of burning peat, dried herbs, and stored provisions. Outside, wind and drifting snow make movement hazardous, emphasizing the importance of preparation, skill, and cooperation for survival. Daily life shifts to accommodate these conditions. Men focus on tool repair, maintenance of boats and sleds, and preparation of firewood for heating and cooking. Blacksmiths continue working in small forges, producing nails, fittings, and implements essential for household and communal labor. Woodworkers craft sleds, furniture, and boat components, while leather workers prepare clothing, harnesses, and bags. Even the smallest failures, a misaligned plank, a cracked oar, a poorly treated hide, can have significant consequences in the harsh winter environment. Women manage food preservation, textile production, and household organization. Milk, butter, and cheese are rationed and stored carefully. Grains and legumes are prepared as porridges and stored for weeks or months. Meat, salted or smoked in earlier seasons, is consumed in measured portions. Spinning and weaving continue intensively, producing warm garments and textiles for domestic use, trade, or ceremonial purposes. Apprentices, usually children, are guided carefully, absorbing not only practical skill, but also the reasoning behind each task, ensuring intergenerational transmission of knowledge essential for survival. Children participate in both work and education. Boys may help maintain boats or tools, accompany adults, on short expeditions or gather fuel. Girls assist with textiles, food management, and household organization. Oral instruction is constant. Genealogies, local histories, and mythic narratives are woven into daily routines. Stories of Thor, Odin, Freyr, and Freyja provide moral guidance, cautionary lessons, and explanations for environmental hazards. Mythology, ritual, and labor are deeply intertwined, creating a framework through which children learn observation, responsibility, and the interconnectedness of community life. Food management is critical. Households ration stores carefully, monitoring quality and quantity. Milk from goats or cows is processed into cheese or butter. Grain is consumed strategically. Dried and salted meat is distributed according to need. Preservation techniques are continually assessed. Damp storage pits, poorly salted fish, or moldy grain can compromise survival. Even minor miscalculations can have cascading effects on household health and morale. Knowledge of these techniques is painstakingly transmitted across generations and reinforced through both practice and observation. Trade continues where possible, though winter conditions impose limitations. Coastal and river navigation is riskier due to ice and storms. Nars and longships are often sheltered or hauled ashore. When trade occurs, goods such as surplus grain, textiles, and crafted items are exchanged for iron tools, salt, or other necessities. Travel requires knowledge of currents, tides, and early ice formation. Communities rely on shared networks of trust and obligation, ensuring that essential resources and information circulate despite environmental constraints. The success of these exchanges depends on skill, planning, and cooperative effort. Ritual and belief remain integrated into daily life. Offerings are made to gods, spirits, and ancestors, seeking protection, guidance, and prosperity. Thor is invoked for safety during travel or labor. Freya for fertility and abundance, Freyja for health and protection. Small gestures like placing grain near a boundary stone or maintaining the hearth fire carefully reinforce the relationship between human effort and divine favor. Seasonal festivals, though limited by weather, provide occasions for communal gathering, reinforcing social cohesion and cultural continuity. Even in the harshest conditions, ritual embeds meaning and order into the repetitive tasks of survival. Environmental challenges shape every decision. Frost, snow, and ice affect movement, food preservation, and livestock health. Storms can damage boats or structures. Predators may target weakened animals, and illness can spread quickly in confined longhouses. Communities rely on experience, observation, and oral knowledge to anticipate and mitigate these risks. Mistakes can be costly, emphasizing the importance of cumulative knowledge, meticulous planning, and mutual support. Mythology provides interpretive frameworks, illustrating both human vulnerability and strategies for resilience through narratives of gods, heroes, and forces beyond control. Social cohesion remains critical. Assemblies and informal councils address disputes, coordinate labor, and plan communal activities. Chieftains or elders exercise authority grounded in reputation, experience, and demonstrated skill. Cooperation ensures that resources are shared, infrastructure is maintained, and obligations are met. Social norms, reinforced through storytelling, ritual, and law, guide behavior, sustaining stability even under harsh environmental pressures. Networks of interdependence extend beyond individual households, forming a resilient web of economic, social, and spiritual support. Reflection on maritime expansion, trade, and settlement practices highlights their historical significance. Communities that mastered navigation, seasonal labor, and craft were able not only to survive, but also to thrive in a challenging environment. Knowledge of tides, wind, currents, and hazards allowed safe movement of goods and people. Skill in agriculture, fishing, and craft ensured that households could endure long winters. Integration of myth and ritual provided moral and practical frameworks for understanding risk and guiding decision-making. The combined effect was a society that was adaptive, resilient, and deeply interconnected with its environment. Even the most mundane actions, harvesting grain, mending sails, tending animals, carry historical significance. They reflect patterns of adaptation, cooperation, and cumulative learning that enabled communities to endure across generations. Archaeological evidence, oral histories, and sagas illuminate these patterns, providing insight into a culture that valued skill, foresight, and social cohesion. Mythology, labor, and ritual are inseparable from the practical realities of survival, illustrating how human societies integrate environmental knowledge, craftsmanship, and cultural meaning into daily life. Winter closes this chapter with reflection. The cycles of labor, maritime travel, trade, and ritual demonstrate a society finely attuned to its environment. Communities rely on preparation, observation, skill, and cooperation to navigate challenges and ensure survival. Mythology reinforces both caution and resilience, guiding behavior and decision-making. Trade and exploration extend social and economic networks, creating interdependence that strengthens cohesion. Through careful attention to both ordinary and extraordinary details, these communities leave a legacy of adaptability, ingenuity, and cultural continuity. By understanding the interplay between labor, environment, ritual, and mythology, we see the Norse not solely as legendary warriors or raiders, but as attentive, skilled, and adaptive people navigating a complex and often hostile world. Their practices, recorded in both material remains and oral traditions, reflect a sophisticated integration of knowledge, culture, and survival strategies, lessons that continue to resonate for those who study their lives today. In this way, the maritime expansion and seasonal labor of these communities form an enduring historical narrative, highlighting human ingenuity, cultural resilience, and the careful balance between effort and environment. Having traced the ebb and flow of coastal settlements and maritime trade, we turn our attention to inland communities, where life unfolds around fertile river valleys, dense forests, and rocky uplands. These settlements differ from their coastal counterparts in both labor patterns and social structures. The rhythm of daily life is dictated by seasons, local resources, and environmental constraints, yet the principles of careful preparation, skillful labor, and integration of ritual remain consistent. In these valleys and forests, the Norse adapt to a slightly different set of challenges, emphasizing agriculture, craft, and local governance. Spring is the beginning of a renewed cycle of labor and observation. Snow recedes gradually, revealing fertile soil and exposing early shoots of wild plants. Men focus first on field preparation, clearing debris, plowing, and repairing fences. Soil in inland valleys is often richer than coastal terrain, but it requires careful attention to rotation and fertilization. Cattle, sheep, and goats are moved to pastures, while pigs forage in forested areas for nuts, roots, and acorns. Hunting remains a supplement to domestic food sources, with men tracking deer, hares, and game birds. Success depends on keen observation, knowledge of animal behavior, and subtle cues in the landscape. Women undertake complementary labor with precision. Gardens are prepared, herbs planted, and vegetables tended for household consumption. Milk from goats and cows is processed into butter and cheese, while surplus is stored or fermented. Grain is sifted, milled, and prepared for porridge or bread. Textiles are woven from wool or flax, repaired, and stored for the changing seasons. Each household task is embedded in both practical and cultural knowledge. Weaving patterns may encode social information or symbolic meanings. Storage techniques reflect an understanding of moisture, temperature, and pest management. Children play a dual role in education and labor. Boys accompany men in fieldwork, observing animal behavior, soil conditions, and forest ecology. Girls assist with textile production and food preparation, absorbing techniques that will become essential in adulthood. Oral instruction is constant. Genealogy, local history, and seasonal patterns are interwoven with practical work. Mythology is reinforced through everyday activities. Freya is invoked for fertility and growth, Thor for protection in hunting or fieldwork, and Freya for health and domestic well-being. These narratives are deeply embedded, guiding observation, caution, and foresight. Craftsmanship emerges as a central feature of inland life. Blacksmiths maintain tools, fashion nails, and produce implements for agriculture and household use. Woodworkers shape plows, furniture, and domestic tools, carefully selecting timber for durability. Leatherworkers treat hides for clothing, shoes, harnesses, and bags. Each craft demands meticulous attention to detail, understanding of materials, and anticipation of environmental conditions. Failures, whether a cracked plowshare, a poorly tanned hide, or a misaligned tool, carry significant consequences, reinforcing the importance of skill, apprenticeship, and cumulative knowledge. Agricultural work is synchronized with environmental cycles. Grain is sown in spring, tended through summer, and harvested in autumn. Livestock management depends on seasonal availability of fodder, water, and shelter. Crop rotation and field maintenance prevent depletion of soil nutrients. Communities observe weather, animal behavior, and celestial markers to anticipate frost, drought, or pest outbreaks. These observations, refined over generations, form the backbone of survival in inland settings. Social organization in inland settlements remains intricate. Assemblies, or things, convene to resolve disputes, manage shared resources, and plan communal labor. Elders or local chieftains preside, their authority reinforced by reputation, knowledge, and skill. Reciprocity is central. Households contribute to collective tasks, assist neighbors during harvest, and honor agreements. Oral law and customary practices guide behavior, ensuring that communities remain cohesive despite environmental challenges. Social bonds are reinforced through storytelling, ritual, and shared labor, embedding morality, history, and practical knowledge in daily life. Ritual and belief permeate labor and domestic life. Offerings to gods and spirits mark the boundaries of fields, the start of sowing, and the care of animals. Seasonal festivals punctuate labor cycles, providing time for reflection, feasting, and social interaction. Mythology explains environmental phenomena, encodes moral lessons, and provides a framework for decision-making. A simple act, such as placing a piece of grain at a field boundary or maintaining the hearth fire with care, reflects a worldview in which human effort is intertwined with cosmic and spiritual forces. Trade exists, but is often more localized than in coastal communities. Surplus grain, livestock products, and crafted goods may be exchanged with neighboring settlements or taken to regional markets. Roads and rivers are essential conduits for trade, though travel is constrained by seasonal changes and environmental hazards. Knowledge of terrain, weather, and river conditions is critical to ensure safety and efficiency. Communities maintain oral maps and instructions, guiding travelers and preserving experience-based knowledge. Even minor errors, misjudging a river crossing, miscalculating weather, or failing to repair transport equipment, can compromise botes. Household survival and inter-settlement relationships. Hunting and foraging supplement agricultural labor. Forests provide nuts, berries, mushrooms, and game. Knowledge of seasonal availability, plant properties, and animal behavior is essential. Overhunting or overforaging can disrupt ecological balance, emphasizing the importance of observation and restraint. Knowledge of local flora and fauna is transmitted through oral instruction, apprenticeships, and practical demonstration. Success in these endeavors ensures both sustenance and the materials necessary for craft and trade, forming a tight interconnection between labor, environment, and culture. Even during periods of apparent abundance, uncertainty persists. Weather, disease, and environmental hazards pose ongoing challenges. Livestock may succumb to illness, crops to drought or frost, and accidents in craft or construction can have significant consequences. Communities rely on observation, adaptive strategies, and collective memory to anticipate and respond to these uncertainties. Mythology provides interpretive frameworks, offering lessons in caution, foresight, and social responsibility. Ritual reinforces adherence to these strategies, ensuring both moral and practical guidance for daily action. As the season progresses, attention shifts toward late summer and autumn preparation. Grain is harvested and stored carefully, livestock is sheltered and fodder prepared, tools, plows, and boats are inspected and repaired. Textiles are mended or produced for winter. Rituals mark these transitions, reinforcing social cohesion and maintaining awareness of environmental cycles. Even minor oversights, improperly stored grain, poorly maintained tools, or unobserved omens, can threaten household stability, highlighting the meticulous attention required to sustain inland communities. Yet, questions remain unresolved. How will inland settlements adapt to environmental stress, scarcity, or social conflict? How do mythology, ritual, and practical knowledge guide decision-making when circumstances challenge traditional patterns? How do communities balance labor, craft, and social cohesion across generations? These questions linger, shaping the choices, strategies, and behaviors that will define inland Norse life in the coming seasons, leading naturally. As summer wanes and the northern light begins its gradual retreat, inland Norse communities turn their attention to the crucial tasks that will determine winter survival. Fields must be harvested, livestock checked and sheltered, tools repaired, and storage facilities inspected. Attention to detail is essential. Minor miscalculations can escalate into food shortages or compromised shelter, threatening both life and social cohesion. These late-season months are marked by careful planning, precise execution, and observation of environmental cues. Men focus primarily on harvesting crops and preparing winter fodder. Grain is cut, threshed, and stored in bins or pits lined with straw to protect against dampness. Hay, rushes and other fodder are gathered from meadows and pastures, carefully stacked to last through the months of snow and ice. Livestock is monitored closely. Sheep, goats and cattle are examined for signs of weakness or disease. Pigs are fed supplementary forage in forested areas, ensuring they gain sufficient weight before winter. Each decision, whether to cull an animal, shift pastures, or store surplus fodder, depends on experience, observation, and an understanding of seasonal patterns. Women intensify domestic labor as harvest progresses. Food preservation reaches its peak. Milk is converted into cheese and butter, surplus grain is dried or fermented, and meat is salted, smoked, or hung in smokehouses. Spinning and weaving continue, producing garments for warmth, trade, or ceremonial use. Apprentices, usually children, are supervised meticulously, learning not only practical techniques, but also the reasoning and timing behind each action. Failure in these tasks can compromise survival. Attention to detail is a matter of both household well-being and cultural responsibility. Children contribute to late-season work while continuing to receive education on practical and cultural knowledge. Boys may assist in harvest, hay stacking, or livestock management, learning observational skills and seasonal cues. Girls may assist with textiles, food preparation, and household organization, absorbing techniques that will become essential in adulthood. Oral instruction remains constant. Genealogies, local history, and mythology are interwoven with daily tasks. Myths of Thor, Odin, Freyr, and Freya reinforce moral lessons, cautionary guidance, and practical decision-making, linking cultural understanding to daily survival. Craftsmanship remains critical. Blacksmiths produce tools and repair implements essential for agricultural labor, household maintenance, and trade. Woodworkers shape plows, sleds, and storage structures, while leatherworkers prepare clothing, harnesses, and bags. Every action requires attention to material properties, environmental conditions, and precision. Errors, such as a poorly sharpened plow, a cracked beam, or improperly tanned hide, can have cascading consequences, emphasizing the importance of apprenticeship, observation, and cumulative knowledge. Agricultural management involves careful synchronization with environmental cues. Crop rotation, soil enrichment, and pasture management ensure both short-term yield and long-term fertility. Livestock movement is planned to optimize grazing, shelter, and water access. Observing weather patterns, celestial markers, and animal behavior allows communities to anticipate frost, drought, or pest outbreaks. These practices reflect centuries of accumulated knowledge, refined through observation, experience, and oral instruction. Local trade plays a significant role in late-season strategy. Surplus grain, livestock products, and crafted goods are exchanged with neighboring settlements or regional markets. Travel depends on rivers, roads, and forest paths, all of which are affected by seasonal changes and environmental hazards. Oral maps of terrain, waterways, and safe routes are transmitted across generations. Cooperation is critical. Households must coordinate to ensure that trade goods are delivered efficiently and safely. Misjudgments in timing or route selection can disrupt supply chains, food security, and inter-settlement relationships. Hunting and foraging supplement agricultural labor. Forests provide nuts, berries, mushrooms, and game. Knowledge of seasonal availability, plant toxicity, and animal behavior is essential. Overhunting or overforaging can disrupt ecological balance, demonstrating the necessity of restraint and observation. Young community members learn these lessons through guided participation, observation, and oral instruction, ensuring both immediate survival and continuity of ecological knowledge. Social governance continues to structure communal life. Assemblies or informal councils meet to resolve disputes, plan cooperative labor, and manage shared resources. Authority resides in elders or local chieftains whose influence is grounded in reputation, knowledge, and skill. Reciprocity governs behavior. Households assist one another in harvesting, transporting goods, and managing shared infrastructure. Oral law and customary practice ensure adherence to community norms, maintaining cohesion despite environmental stresses. Social bonds are reinforced through ritual, shared labor, and storytelling. Ritual and belief remain intertwined with practical action. Offerings are made to gods and spirits during harvest, for animal health, or before journeys into forested or riverine landscapes. Thor is invoked for protection against storms and predators, Freya for fertility and abundance, and Freya for domestic well-being. Seasonal festivals, though limited by daylight and weather, provide communal opportunities for reflection, exchange, and reinforcement of cultural norms. Mythology and ritual continue to serve as interpretive frameworks for environmental uncertainty and moral guidance. Environmental hazards intensify in late autumn. Frost, heavy rains, and early snow can damage crops, impede travel, and stress livestock. Predators become more active as natural food sources decline. River crossings may become treacherous, and forest paths slippery and hazardous. Communities respond with observation, careful planning, and labor-intensive mitigation strategies. Knowledge accumulated over generations informs decision-making, while myth and ritual reinforce caution and foresight. Even small miscalculations can have significant consequences for survival and social stability. Despite meticulous preparation, uncertainty persists. Winter looms, bringing shorter days, snow, and frozen waterways. Households must anticipate food, fuel, and material needs, while balancing labor, social obligations, and environmental unpredictability. Mythology provides interpretive frameworks for understanding and mitigating risk, while ritual reinforces vigilance, cooperation, and respect for forces beyond human control. Stories of gods, giants, and heroes encode lessons in foresight, caution, and strategic thinking, informing practical decision-making at every level. As the season progresses, inland communities shift focus towards storage, shelter, and readiness for winter. Grain is secured, livestock is housed and fed, tools and boats are inspected, and textiles are prepared or mended. Rituals mark transitions, reinforcing social cohesion, environmental awareness, and moral guidance. Even small lapses, improperly stored grain, neglected shelter, or overlooked environmental cues can threaten household survival and social stability, highlighting the interdependence of skill, observation, and culture. Yet unresolved questions linger. How will inland settlements respond to environmental stress, scarcity, or disease in the coming winter? How will trade, craft, and social networks adapt to changing conditions? How do mythology, ritual, and practical knowledge continue to guide decisions when circumstances disrupt established patterns? These questions persist, shaping choices, behaviors, and communal strategies that will define the inland Norse experience in the following months, leading naturally. As the days grow shorter and the sun lowers toward the horizon, inland Norse communities feel the approach of winter with a combination of caution and quiet urgency. Frost touches exposed soil, rivers begin to form ice along their edges, and trees shed their last leaves, leaving the landscape skeletal and muted. In these conditions, daily life is no longer dictated solely by routine, but by careful anticipation of hazards that can imperil survival. Communities rely on accumulated knowledge, observation of environmental signals, and practical skill, while mythology and ritual continue to guide action and reinforce social cohesion. Men intensify work on shelter and storage. Longhouses, constructed from timber, stone, and sod, are inspected and reinforced. Roofs are repaired, walls tightened against drafts, and thatch or turf replaced where erosion or moisture has created vulnerabilities. Outbuildings, including granaries, tool sheds, and animal enclosures, receive similar attention. Snow accumulation is anticipated, with structural supports examined to prevent collapse. Tools are sharpened and repaired, and sleds prepared for transport of supplies or firewood. Precision is essential. Even minor flaws can result in structural failure, food loss, or injury. Women focus on food preservation and household management. Milk is processed into butter and cheese, grain is portioned and stored carefully, and meat is salted, smoked, or hung to dry. Spinning and weaving continue, producing warm garments and textiles essential for both domestic use and trade. Preservation techniques are tested by ambient temperature, humidity, and pest activity, requiring careful observation and judgment. Apprentices, primarily children, learn not only practical skills, but also the reasoning behind timing, storage, and preparation, ensuring intergenerational transmission of survival knowledge. Child. Wren's roles expand during this period. Boys assist with firewood collection, snow clearance, and small maintenance tasks, while girls help organize household stores and participate in textile production. Both are immersed in oral education. Genealogies, seasonal lore, and mythic narratives are intertwined with practical labor. These stories reinforce moral lessons, cautionary guidance, and practical knowledge, linking cultural understanding to decision-making in hazardous conditions. Freya is invoked for abundance, Thor for protection against environmental threats, and Freyja for domestic well-being, guiding both action and social behavior. Craftsmanship remains central to survival. Blacksmiths repair tools and produce essential implements such as nails, hooks, and plowshares. Woodworkers maintain sleds, furniture, and storage structures, while leatherworkers repair clothing, harnesses, and containers. Every task requires attention to material properties, environmental conditions, and precision. Failure, such as a cracked plowshare, improperly treated hide, or unstable wooden support, can jeopardize both safety and food security. Apprenticeship ensures skills are transmitted effectively, embedding knowledge that combines observation, tradition, and practical problem-solving. Agricultural and livestock management are adapted for winter. Fields are left fallow, enriched with manure or compost, and protected where possible. Livestock is sheltered in barns or pens, provided with carefully rationed fodder, and monitored for signs of stress or illness. Seasonal cues, snow depth, temperature fluctuation, and early frost guide decisions regarding movement, feeding, and protection. These strategies, refined over generations, demonstrate the critical integration of environmental knowledge and practical skill. Social structures and governance continue to operate, though the scope of activity contracts to immediate survival and household management. Assemblies still convene when necessary, resolving disputes, coordinating labor, or organizing mutual assistance. Chieftains or elders maintain authority through reputation, skill, and knowledge of customary law. Reciprocity remains vital. Households assist one another with snow clearance, firewood collection, or emergency repairs. These interactions reinforce social cohesion and ensure survival under challenging conditions. Ritual and mythology are deeply intertwined with winter survival. Offerings are made at hearths, field boundaries, or sacred stones, seeking protection, guidance, and fertility. Seasonal festivals, though limited by daylight and harsh weather, mark transitions and reinforce communal bonds. Myths of gods, giants, and heroes provide interpretive frameworks for understanding environmental hazards, human vulnerability, and the consequences of negligence. Ritual and narrative work together to guide behavior, codifying knowledge, warning against hubris, and promoting careful attention to detail. Environmental hazards are omnipresent. Frost and snow can impair mobility, damage crops, and stress livestock. Storms threaten buildings and stored food. Ice can render river crossings treacherous, and predators may exploit weakened or unsheltered animals. Communities rely on careful observation, contingency planning, and cooperative labor to mitigate these risks. Even small mistakes, misjudging snow accumulation, improperly storing grain, or failing to reinforce a shelter, can have significant consequences for household survival and social stability. Trade, though reduced in frequency and scope, continues where feasible. Surplus grain, textiles, and crafted goods may be exchanged with neighboring settlements or regional markets. Winter travel is challenging, requiring knowledge of frozen rivers, forest paths, and snow-covered terrain. Oral guidance, passed down through generations, provides critical information for safe navigation and timing. Coordination between households and settlements ensures that trade is efficient, reliable, and mutually beneficial. Misjudgments can have ripple effects, affecting both survival and social cohesion. Despite careful preparation, uncertainty remains a constant factor. Weather, illness, and accidents can undermine the most meticulous planning. Mythology provides moral and practical lessons. Stories of Thor's battles, Odin's quests, or Freyja's interventions encode strategies for foresight, risk management, and communal cooperation. Ritual reinforces these strategies, linking daily labor to spiritual observance and cultural identity. Observing these lessons ensures that communities not only survive, but also retain knowledge and cohesion for the seasons to come. As the season progresses, attention shifts toward ensuring sufficient food, fuel, and shelter for the darkest months. Household stores are checked, livestock monitored, and tools maintained. Rituals mark these transitions, reinforcing communal cohesion and environmental awareness. Even minor oversights, mismanaged storage, weakened shelter, or neglected animals can have consequences, emphasizing the meticulous attention necessary to endure winter. Yet unresolved questions remain. How will inland settlements respond to extreme conditions, scarcity, or social tension during the prolonged winter months? How will trade networks and inter-settlement cooperation adapt to environmental stress? How do mythology, ritual, and practical knowledge continue to guide survival when traditional patterns are disrupted? These uncertainties shape the choices, labor allocation, and social strategies that will define the community in the coming months, leading naturally. Winter settles fully over the inland valleys and uplands, cloaking the landscape in snow, frost, and a muted stillness. Days are short, the sun barely rising above the horizon, and longhouses glow with hearth fire, smoke curling steadily toward low ceilings. This season demands meticulous attention. Food stores, shelter, livestock, and tools must be managed with care. Mistakes can have cascading consequences, affecting survival, health, and social cohesion. In these conditions, the integration of practical skill, observation, ritual, and myth becomes not only cultural, but essential for life itself. Daily routines revolve around maintaining warmth, sustenance, and social cohesion. Men focus on firewood collection, structural reinforcement, and repair of essential implements. Blacksmiths maintain tools and produce nails, hooks, and other hardware necessary for survival. Woodworkers craft sleds, repair furniture, and maintain storage structures, while leatherworkers tend clothing, harnesses, and containers. Each craft is essential. Errors, cracked beams, improperly treated hides, or worn plowshares can threaten household stability. Apprentices are guided carefully, absorbing both practical skills and the reasoning behind each action, ensuring continuity of knowledge across generations. Women oversee food management, preservation, and textile production. Milk is transformed into butter and cheese. Grains and legumes are portioned and stored strategically. Meat is smoked, salted, or hung to dry. Spinning and weaving remain essential, producing garments for warmth, household textiles, and items intended for trade. Household organization is exacting, with every container, bundle, and stack carefully monitored. Minor oversights, a damp grain bin, improperly salted meat, or neglected textiles can compromise survival. Apprentices absorb these practices, internalizing both the technical skill and the decision-making framework necessary for winter endurance. Children participate actively in labor while learning cultural knowledge. Boys assist with sled transport, firewood management, and minor repairs, while girls participate in textiles and food preparation. Oral instruction continues uninterrupted. Genealogies, seasonal lore, and mythic narratives are interwoven with practical work. Myths reinforce moral guidance and risk assessment. Thor provides protection against storms and hazards. Freya guides abundance and fertility, and Freyja maintains domestic well-being. These narratives create a moral and practical framework for interpreting environmental challenges, social obligations, and household responsibilities. Agricultural and livestock management are carefully monitored throughout winter. Stored grain is checked for pests and moisture. Livestock is sheltered and fed rationed fodder, and pasture conditions are observed to prevent disease or stress. Even the smallest signs, slight frost damage, reduced fodder weight, or signs of illness in animals, prompt adjustments. Environmental awareness is cultivated through observation, experience, and oral guidance. Communities understand that attention to these details ensures both immediate survival and the continuation of adaptive strategies honed over generations. Social cohesion continues to be vital. Assemblies and informal councils convene as necessary, resolving disputes, coordinating labor, and managing communal resources. Chieftains and elders maintain authority through experience, knowledge, and moral credibility. Reciprocity governs behavior. Households assist one another in firewood collection, emergency repairs, or livestock care. These interactions reinforce social bonds and ensure collective resilience. Oral law, custom, and ritual guide these practices, embedding ethical norms and iron mental understanding and shared knowledge into daily life. Trade, though limited during winter, remains significant where possible. Surplus textiles, craft items, or preserved food may be exchanged with neighboring settlements. Knowledge of terrain, frozen rivers, and forest paths informs travel, requiring careful observation and communication. Coordination ensures that trade is efficient and minimizes risk. Even minor miscalculations, misjudging ice thickness, underestimating snow depth, or failing to repair transport tools, can jeopardize both the household and inter-settlement networks. These activities reflect an intricate balance of skill, observation, and cooperation. Ritual and mythology continue to guide behavior. Offerings and prayers mark seasonal transitions, seek protection for households and livestock, and provide moral and practical guidance. Festivals and gatherings, though constrained by light and weather, reinforce social cohesion, transmit cultural knowledge, and maintain awareness of environmental cycles. Mythology functions as a practical guide as much as a cultural one. Stories of gods, giants, and heroes encode strategies for survival, cautionary lessons, and ethical norms. Even mundane labor, repairing a roof, tending livestock, or storing grain, is informed by ritualized observation, embedding culture into everyday action. Environmental hazards define the season. Frost, ice, and snow restrict mobility, damage structures, and increase workload. Predators exploit weakened or unsheltered animals, while disease can spread rapidly in confined spaces. Communities respond with foresight, labor coordination, and practical knowledge. Mismanagement in storage, structural maintenance, or animal care can have severe consequences, emphasizing the necessity of vigilance, skill, and cooperative effort. Mythology and ritual provide both interpretive frameworks and reinforcement of best practices, sustaining community resilience even under extreme stress. Reflection on inland Norse life highlights the integration of labor, skill, environment, and culture. Communities that mastered agriculture, craft, preservation, and environmental observation were able to endure long winters and maintain social cohesion. Apprenticeship ensured continuity of knowledge, while mythology and ritual reinforced practical strategies and moral norms. Trade networks, though localized, facilitated resource distribution and social interconnection. Observing these practices demonstrates a society finely attuned to environmental constraints, skilled in survival, and resilient across generations. The legacy of inland settlements is evident in both material and cultural records. Archaeological remains, longhouses, storage pits, tools, and textiles illustrate the practical ingenuity of these communities. Oral histories and sagas capture social norms, mythic frameworks, and practical knowledge that underpinned daily life. These communities were not static. They adapted, refined, and transmitted knowledge, demonstrating an intricate interplay of labor, ritual, and survival. Even the most ordinary actions, mending a roof, tending livestock, or weaving textiles, carry historical significance, reflecting adaptation, foresight, and communal interdependence. Winter closes with reflection. Survival depended on preparation, skill, observation, and cooperation. Mythology and ritual embedded moral guidance and practical strategies into daily life. Trade, craft, and agricultural knowledge created networks of resilience that extended across settlements. Through these practices, inland Norse communities demonstrate the careful balance between labor, environment, and cultural continuity, leaving a legacy of adaptability, ingenuity, and social cohesion that continues to inform our understanding of their lives today. In this way, the inland Norse are remembered not merely as inhabitants of a harsh northern landscape, but as skilled, adaptive, and culturally rich communities. Their practices reveal the interplay of environment, labor, ritual, and knowledge, demonstrating that survival was as much a product of observation, foresight, and social cooperation as it was of physical endurance. The strategies, decisions, and adaptations of these communities provide insight into a historically grounded worldview, where every action, however mundane, contributed to the continuity of life and culture across generations. Having traced the rhythms of inland and coastal life, we now turn to the broader networks that connected Norse communities, linking settlements through trade, diplomacy, and shared governance. By the late Viking era, social and economic structures had become increasingly complex. Coastal fjords, river valleys, and inland settlements were integrated into wider networks of exchange, mobility, and cultural influence. These networks required careful observation, cooperation, and foresight, reflecting the same principles that govern daily life within individual households, yet magnified across regional landscapes. Spring brings a surge in movement and activity. Rivers and fjords clear of ice, allowing boats to transport goods and people. Roads, though rudimentary, are more navigable, and settlements coordinate the timing of travel to avoid hazards. Merchants and householders alike participate, carrying grain, textiles, tools, salted or smoked fish, and other resources to neighboring communities or regional markets. Even small-scale trade depends on knowledge of seasonal conditions, river currents, tidal patterns, and environmental indicators. Miscalculations can result in delays, lost goods, or personal risk, emphasizing the ongoing importance of observation and preparation. Local chieftains and emerging political leaders play central roles in regulating trade, maintaining security, and adjudicating disputes. Assemblies or things serve as venues for negotiation, arbitration, and coordination of collective efforts. Decisions often balance competing interests. One household's surplus may be another's essential provision. One settlement's timing may affect regional logistics. Authority is reinforced through reputation, skill, and experience, rather than coercion alone. Communities recognize the importance of cooperation, reciprocity, and careful record-keeping to society, and social cohesion and economic efficiency across increasingly interdependent settlements. Women continue to manage domestic production with heightened awareness of both local and regional demands. Textile production, food preservation, and household organization remain critical. Surplus goods are prepared not only for winter survival, but also for exchange. The timing and quality of these products influence trade relationships and social standing. Apprentices, both boys and girls, are carefully instructed in techniques and strategies, learning how domestic labor interconnects with regional economic structures. Attention to detail ensures not only household survival, but also successful participation in broader networks. Children remain active participants in labor, observation, and education. Boys may accompany men in boat transport, surveying routes, or overseeing livestock. Girls may assist in textile production, food management, or household logistics. Oral instruction continues, blending genealogical knowledge, regional history, and mythic narratives with practical observation. Stories of Thor, Odin, and Freyja provide both cautionary guidance and exemplars of skill, foresight, and strategic thinking. Mythology informs decision-making, linking individual action to wider cultural and environmental awareness, and reinforcing the ethical framework for trade, labor, and cooperation. Craftsmanship underpins regional networks. Blacksmiths produce nails, tools, and fittings essential for boats, houses, and farms. Woodworkers shape planks, sleds, and storage structures, while leatherworkers prepare garments, harnesses, and transport containers. Every product must meet both practical and aesthetic standards. Poorly made goods compromise survival, social standing, and trade relationships. Apprenticeships ensure skill continuity, while observation of environmental and matrices, conditions informs technique. Knowledge of humidity, wood grain, and animal hide treatment becomes critical not only locally, but across the wider network of settlements. Trade routes extend beyond immediate neighbors. Nars navigate coastal waters to deliver salt, iron, and luxury items from distant lands. Rivers connect inland settlements to regional markets, where local produce and crafted goods are exchanged. Timing, route selection, and load management require careful planning and shared knowledge. Communities rely on oral instructions, seasonal observation, and cumulative experience to minimize risk. Even minor misjudgments, miscalculating currents, underestimating wind, or misjudging storage capacity, can have significant consequences, highlighting the meticulous care needed in regional commerce. Political structures are closely entwined with trade. Chieftains and assemblies regulate disputes, enforce customary law, and coordinate labor for communal infrastructure such as bridges, roads, and docks. Authority is both practical and symbolic, legitimized by reputation, knowledge, and demonstrated skill. Networks of loyalty and reciprocity underpin decisions, ensuring that both local and regional needs are addressed. Oral memory, precedent, and cumulative experience are critical. Settlements depend on shared understanding of law, trade obligations, and environmental awareness to maintain cohesion. Environmental knowledge remains central. River levels, tides, storm patterns, and seasonal wind shifts influence trade, travel, and settlement safety. Communities monitor animal behavior, river conditions, and weather patterns to anticipate hazards. Even small changes, early storms, rising river levels, or ice formation can disrupt trade and threaten survival. Observational skills are taught systematically, passed orally from experienced travelers, merchants, and elders to younger generations. Environmental literacy is both practical and cultural, forming a core component of education and community strategy. Ritual and mythology continue to intersect with regional activity. Offerings and prayers are made at departure points, river crossings, and field boundaries, seeking protection, success, and favor. Festivals reinforce social cohesion, transmit cultural knowledge, and provide opportunities for negotiation, alliance formation, and the reinforcement of social norms. Stories of gods, heroes, and spirits inform decisions regarding navigation, trade, and community obligations. Even practical labor, loading a boat, repairing a structure, or allocating supplies, is framed within this cultural context, blending observation, skill, and belief. Late spring and early summer demand heightened coordination. Agricultural cycles, livestock management, craft production, and trade all converge. Communities negotiate timing, allocate labor, and manage resources to ensure survival, social stability, and economic success. Observational skills, environmental awareness, and social negotiation are tested continuously. Failure in coordination or judgment can ripple through multiple settlements, demonstrating the high stakes of integrated regional networks. Yet questions remain unresolved. How will expanding trade networks respond to environmental variability, seasonal hazards, or social tension? How will political structures adapt to increased regional interdependence? How does mythology continue to inform decision-making when practical and social challenges intersect? These uncertainties shape the choices, strategies, and behaviors that will define the final period of Norse settlement and regional integration, leading naturally. As the year progresses toward late summer and early autumn, Norse communities face a convergence of responsibilities that will shape survival, social cohesion, and regional prosperity. Rivers begin to swell from spring melt, then recede as rainfall fluctuates. Fjords remain navigable, but storms grow more frequent. Households must balance agricultural work, livestock management, craft production, and trade coordination while anticipating the hazards of winter. Preparation becomes meticulous and exhaustive, requiring skill, observation, and social cooperation. Men focus on final harvests and transport logistics. Grain is gathered, threshed, and stored in secure bins or pits lined with straw to prevent spoilage. Hay and other fodder are collected for livestock, ensuring adequate winter provisions. Boats, sleds, and transport implements are repaired or reinforced, anticipating storms, fluctuating river currents, and heavy loads. Each household contributes to both local tasks and broader regional coordination, ensuring goods reach markets and neighboring settlements efficiently. Miscalculations in timing, route selection, or storage can ripple through multiple communities, emphasizing the interdependence of households and settlements. Women continue domestic production with a keen awareness of both local and regional needs. Food preservation reaches its peak. Milk is converted to butter and cheese. Grains are dried and stored. Meat is salted or smoked. Textile production intensifies, generating clothing, household items, and goods intended for trade. Apprentices learn not only technical skill, but also the reasoning behind timing, quality, and distribution. These practices ensure households are self-sufficient and capable of participating successfully in trade networks, highlighting the importance of domestic labor in regional economic stability. Children remain integrate, tied into labor and education. Boys may assist with river transport, monitoring livestock or minor construction, while girls participate in textile production, food preparation, and household organization. Oral instruction continues, blending genealogy, myth, and practical observation. Stories of Thor, Odin, and Freya guide behavior, providing moral and strategic frameworks for decision-making under conditions of uncertainty. Observation, apprenticeship, and cultural literacy are inseparable from practical labor, reinforcing both skill and community cohesion. Craftsmanship remains crucial. Blacksmiths repair plows, nails, hooks, and other tools essential for both survival and trade. Woodworkers maintain sleds, storage structures, and boats, while leatherworkers produce clothing, harnesses, and transport containers. Precision is essential. Even minor flaws, a cracked plank, poorly treated hide, or weakened structure, can jeopardize household survival and trade obligations. Apprenticeships ensure skill continuity, with environmental observation, material knowledge, and social responsibility embedded into each step of production. Agricultural and livestock management intensify. Late summer crops are harvested and stored carefully. Livestock is moved to winter shelters and monitored for signs of stress, disease, or malnutrition. Observations of frost, rainfall, and soil conditions inform decision-making, enabling adjustments to feeding, storage, and workload. Communities rely on cumulative experience, oral instruction, and ritual guidance to navigate environmental uncertainty, ensuring that households and settlements maintain resilience across the changing seasons. Trade coordination expands regionally. Surplus goods, grain, textiles, preserved food, and crafted items are distributed to neighboring settlements or regional markets. Navigation requires knowledge of tides, river levels, and potential hazards. Timing is coordinated across settlements to ensure efficient delivery and receipt of goods. Minor misjudgments, such as miscalculating currents, underestimating storm risk, or overloading boats, can disrupt both local and regional systems. Cooperation and trust are essential. Settlements rely on shared knowledge, obligations, and reciprocity to sustain trade and social stability. Political structures continue to manage regional interdependence. Assemblies and informal councils address disputes, allocate labor for collective projects, and ensure equitable distribution of resources. Chieftains or elders mediate conflicts and enforce customary law, relying on reputation, experience, and social consensus. Authority is closely tied to demonstrated competence in managing resources, navigating trade, and maintaining environmental awareness. Decision-making reflects both practical necessity and moral legitimacy, blending observation, cumulative experience, and cultural norms. Environmental hazards shape all aspects of late-season preparation. Frost, storms, and heavy rainfall can damage stored goods, impair transport, or compromise shelter. Predators may target vulnerable livestock, while disease or spoilage threaten both animals and humans. Communities rely on constant observation, adaptive labor strategies, and contingency planning to mitigate these risks. Mythology provides interpretive frameworks. Tales of Thor, Odin, and Freya guide behavior, encode cautionary lessons, and reinforce ethical and practical norms. Ritual reinforces vigilance and cooperation, embedding social and environmental awareness into daily life. Latin Summon. Our festivals and communal gatherings provide opportunities to coordinate trade, celebrate harvests, and reinforce social cohesion. Households exchange goods, negotiate alliances, and transmit practical knowledge. Oral traditions reinforce observation of environmental patterns, seasonal labor strategies, and moral principles. Even small acts, arranging stored grain, repairing a structure, or coordinating river transport, carry significance both practical and symbolic, linking daily labor to broader cultural and social networks. Despite meticulous preparation, uncertainty persists. Weather shifts, illness, accidents, or social tension can disrupt even the best-laid plans. Communities rely on cumulative knowledge, environmental observation, social cooperation, and ritualized guidance to anticipate and respond to these challenges. Mythology and ritual encode lessons in foresight, risk management, and moral behavior, guiding both individual and collective action. Observing these practices underscores the interconnectedness of survival, labor, and culture in late-season preparation. Yet unresolved questions linger. How will regional networks manage unexpected environmental stress or disruption in trade? How will political structures respond to conflicts or scarcity? How do mythology, ritual, and observation continue to guide decision-making under conditions of uncertainty? These questions shape the choices, coordination, and strategies that will define settlement stability and resilience, leading naturally. As the late summer sun fades and autumn progresses, Norse communities across fjords, river valleys, and inland settlements sense the impending arrival of winter. The landscape shifts gradually. Deciduous trees shed their leaves, rivers begin to slow, and ice edges form along banks, and the first frosts touch exposed soil. These changes are subtle but deeply significant, signaling the need for heightened vigilance, labor coordination, and careful management of both material and social resources. Survival during the coming months depends on accumulated knowledge, foresight, and the integration of practical and cultural strategies. Men intensify their work on infrastructure and logistics. Longhouses, barns, granaries, and storage pits are inspected and reinforced. Roofs are checked for leaks or weak points. Walls are patched, and structural supports are reinforced against snow accumulation and wind damage. Boats, sleds, and wagons are repaired and fitted with functional reinforcements, anticipating early storms and frozen waterways. Labor is carefully coordinated. Neighbors may assist one another, chieftains oversee communal projects, and apprenticeship ensures the transmission of knowledge to younger generations. Even minor oversights, an insecure roof, poorly stacked firewood, or a damaged boat, can threaten survival, emphasizing the critical role of meticulous preparation. Women focus on domestic labor, balancing food preservation, textile production, and household organization. Milk is transformed into butter and cheese. Grains and legumes are dried, sorted, and stored. Meat is salted, smoked, or hung to dry. Textile production intensifies, generating warm garments for household use, items for trade, and materials for ceremonial or symbolic purposes. Apprentices, often children, learn not only practical techniques, but also the reasoning behind timing, storage, and quality. The success of these preparations is essential for both immediate survival and broader participation in regional trade networks. Children continue to participate actively in labor while learning observation, cultural knowledge, and seasonal strategy. Boys may assist in animal management, sled transport, or small construction, while girls assist in textiles, food preparation, and household organization. Oral instruction blends genealogy, local history, myth, and practical observation. Stories of Thor, Odin, and Freyja provide cautionary lessons, moral guidance, and exemplars of strategic thinking. Observation, apprenticeship, and cultural literacy remain inseparable from labor, ensuring that practical and ethical knowledge is transmitted across generations. Craftsmanship remains central to survival and economic stability. Blacksmiths maintain tools, repair fittings, and produce nails, hooks, and plowshares. Woodworkers shape sleds, reinforce storage structures, and repair boats. Leatherworkers prepare clothing, harnesses, and containers. Each task demands precision, attention to material properties, and awareness of environmental conditions. Poorly executed work, an unstable beam, a misaligned plank, or a poorly treated hide can compromise household safety, disrupt trade, or endanger livestock. Apprenticeship ensures continuity of skill, embedding environmental literacy, practical judgment, and communal responsibility into each craft. Agricultural and livestock management are adapted for seasonal transition. Fields are fallowed, enriched with manure or compost, and cleared of debris. Livestock is moved to secure winter enclosures, fed rationed fodder, and monitored for signs of illness or stress. Observations of frost, precipitation, and river conditions guide decisions on feeding, shelter, and labor allocation. Environmental literacy, passed down orally and through practical demonstration, ensures that households are prepared for the rigors of winter. Minor misjudgments, insufficient fodder, poorly insulated shelters, or delayed harvest can have serious consequences for survival and regional stability. Trade continues, but becomes more challenging as winter approaches. Surplus goods, grain, textiles, preserved food, and crafted items must be transported to regional markets or neighboring settlements. Travel is complicated by changing river currents, early frost, and the threat of storms. Oral instructions, cumulative experience, and careful observation guide decision-making. Coordination between households and settlements ensures that trade occurs efficiently and safely, maintaining social cohesion and regional interdependence. Miscalculations in timing, load management, or route selection can ripple through multiple communities. Political structures oversee both local and regional preparedness. Assemblies and informal councils address disputes, allocate labor, and coordinate resources. Chieftains and elders mediate conflicts, enforce customary law, and ensure equitable distribution of essential supplies. Authority is reinforced by reputation, knowledge, and demonstrated skill, particularly in managing environmental challenges and maintaining social cohesion. Reciprocity and mutual obligation are critical. Households assist one another in reinforcing shelters, collecting firewood, or transporting supplies, maintaining resilience under increasingly harsh conditions. Ritual and mythology remain deeply intertwined with seasonal labor and preparation. Offerings are made at hearths, field boundaries, and departure points, seeking protection, abundance, and guidance. Seasonal festivals, though curtailed by shortening days and deteriorating weather, reinforce social cohesion, transmit practical knowledge, and maintain cultural memory. Mythic narratives inform both moral reasoning and strategic decision-making, guiding attention to environmental cues, labor allocation, and social obligations. Every act, repairing a roof, securing livestock, storing grain, is embedded within this cultural and spiritual framework. Environmental hazards define daily routines. Frost, snow, storms, and early ice threaten structures, transport, and stored goods. Predators exploit vulnerable livestock, while disease and spoilage pose ongoing risks. Communities rely on observation, preparation, and cooperative labor to mitigate these hazards. Mythology and ritual reinforce vigilance and provide interpretive frameworks, encoding lessons in foresight, caution, and ethical behavior. These frameworks ensure that practical, social, and spiritual dimensions of survival are interlinked. Even with careful planning, uncertainty persists. Weather, illness, accidents, or social tensions can disrupt even the best-laid strategies. Mythology provides interpretive lessons, and ritual reinforces social and environmental awareness, guiding decision-making under uncertainty. Observation, cumulative experience, and cooperative labor remain essential, demonstrating the interdependence of skill, culture, and social cohesion in the face of environmental challenges. Yet unresolved questions linger. How will these communities endure the harshest winter months? Will trade networks sustain interdependence and resource distribution under extreme conditions? How will political structures adapt to unforeseen crises? And how will mythology and ritual continue to guide both practical and social decisions? These uncertainties shape the labor, planning, and choices that will define survival, leading naturally. Winter has fully descended across fjords, river valleys, and inland settlements. The landscape is cloaked in snow and ice, light barely illuminating longhouses, and frost encrusting riverbanks and forest edges. Households huddle around hearths, maintaining warmth, monitoring livestock, and managing food stores. These conditions demand meticulous attention to labor, observation, and coordination. Survival is dependent not solely on physical endurance, but on the integration of practical skill, social cooperation, and culturally informed strategies derived from centuries of observation and adaptation. Men focus on maintaining infrastructure and transport capabilities. Longhouses are reinforced against wind and snow, roofs repaired, and walls strengthened to retain heat. Granaries and storage pits are checked for leaks, pests, and spoilage. Boats, sleds, and wagons are maintained for regional trade or emergency transport. Even minor oversights, a weakened roof, improperly stacked firewood, or damaged transport equipment, can compromise household stability or trade efficiency. Apprenticeship ensures that practical knowledge, environmental awareness, and labor skill are transmitted to younger generations, embedding survival strategies within cultural memory. Women manage domestic labor with heightened precision. Food preservation continues. Milk is processed into butter and cheese. Grain is stored and monitored. Meat is salted, smoked, or hung to dry. Textile production remains vital, producing warm garments for household use, trade, and ceremonial purposes. Apprentices learn technical skill and reasoning, understanding the timing, quality, and strategic implications of domestic work. The domestic sphere is not merely a site of survival, but a critical node within broader trade networks and social obligations. Children participate actively in both labor and education. Boys may assist with animal care, sled transport, or minor construction, while girls contribute to textiles, food preparation, and household organization. Oral instruction continues. Genealogies, regional history, and mythic narratives are interwoven with practical labor. Mythology informs moral reasoning and strategic thinking. Thor embodies protection against hazards. Odin exemplifies foresight and knowledge, and Freya embodies domestic well-being and prosperity. Observation, apprenticeship, and cultural literacy are inseparable from labor, ensuring continuity of both skill and ethical frameworks. Craftsmanship remains crucial for survival and regional connectivity. Blacksmiths repair tools, fittings, and nails. Woodworkers maintain sleds, boats, and storage structures. Leatherworkers produce clothing, harnesses, and containers. Precision is essential. Minor flaws, a misaligned plank, a weak beam, or an improperly treated hide, can jeopardize household stability, trade relationships, and even life. Apprenticeships guarantee continuity of skills, embedding observation, judgment, and practical knowledge within communal practice. Each act of craft integrates material understanding, environmental awareness, and social responsibility. Agricultural and livestock management is a constant concern. Fields lie fallow, enriched with compost, and cleared of debris. Livestock is housed securely, fed rationed fodder, and observed for signs of stress or illness. Environmental cues, frost, snowfall, or river freeze, inform decision-making, prompting adjustments to feeding, shelter, and labor allocation. Communities rely on oral knowledge, cumulative experience, and ritual guidance to navigate environmental uncertainty, ensuring both household survival and inter-settlement stability. Trade continues in limited scope, but regional coordination remains essential. Surplus goods, grain, textiles, preserved food, and crafted items are transported carefully to maintain networks of interdependence. Navigation depends on ice thickness, snow conditions, and river flow. Oral guidance, observation, and shared experience underpin decision-making. Coordination ensures efficiency, minimizes risk, and sustains trust between settlements. Miscalculations, even minor, can have cascading effects on survival, commerce, and social cohesion. Political structures remain central. Assemblies and informal councils oversee disputes, allocate communal labor, and coordinate resources. Chieftains and elders maintain authority grounded in reputation, skill, and knowledge of customary law. Reciprocity and mutual obligation guide behavior. Households assist neighbors with firewood, repair, or livestock care. Authority is both practical and symbolic, reflecting demonstrated competence in managing environmental hazards, social cooperation, and economic coordination. Decisions blend observation, cumulative experience, and culturally embedded ethics. Ritual and mythology provide a lens through which all activity is interpreted. Offerings and prayers are made at hearths, field boundaries, and departure points, seeking protection, prosperity, and guidance. Seasonal festivals, constrained by weather and daylight, reinforce social cohesion, transmit knowledge, and strengthen community memory. Mythic narratives encode lessons in foresight, risk assessment, and ethical conduct. Every laborious task, repairing a roof, tending animals, or storing goods, is informed by this framework, embedding survival, morality, and cultural continuity in daily life. Environmental hazards dominate winter life. Frost, snow, and storms threaten structures, stored food, and transport. Predators exploit livestock, kick weaknesses. Disease and spoilage threaten both humans and animals. Communities respond through observation, labor coordination, and adherence to cumulative knowledge and ritual guidance. Mythology provides interpretive frameworks, embedding lessons in foresight, caution, and ethical behavior. These frameworks ensure that survival is both practical and culturally meaningful. Reflection on the late Viking era highlights the interconnection of labor, observation, social cooperation, and culture. Communities that mastered agriculture, craft, preservation, trade, and environmental literacy were resilient across seasons and generations. Apprenticeship ensured skill continuity, while mythology and ritual reinforced practical strategies and moral guidance. Trade networks facilitated resource distribution, social interdependence, and regional cohesion. Every routine, from mending a roof to weaving textiles, demonstrates the integration of observation, skill, and culture, leaving an enduring legacy. The historical impact of these communities is evident in both material and cultural records. Archaeological evidence, tools, longhouses, storage structures, and craft remnants illustrates the practical ingenuity of Norse settlements. Oral histories, sagas, and mythic narratives capture moral guidance, practical knowledge, and social organization, ensuring continuity of cultural memory. Even seemingly mundane tasks, storing grain, tending livestock, repairing a tool, carry historical significance, reflecting adaptation, foresight, and social cohesion. Winter closes with reflection. Survival depended on skill, observation, and labor, but also on social cooperation, trade, and culturally embedded strategies. Mythology and ritual-guided behavior encoded practical lessons and reinforced ethical norms. Trade networks and political structures maintained resilience and interdependence. Through these practices, the Norse demonstrate adaptability, ingenuity, and cultural richness. Their strategies, choices, and actions shaped not only immediate survival, but also the enduring legacy of their society, informing our understanding of historical continuity, adaptation, and human resilience in challenging environments. In the end, The Norse of the late Viking era are remembered not simply as seafarers, warriors, or traders, but as communities that wove together environment, labor, social structure, and culture into a resilient and adaptive way of life. Their legacy persists in the material traces left behind, the oral histories preserved, and the enduring lessons embedded in their integration of observation, skill, and community. Survival, productivity, and cultural memory were inseparable, creating a model of interconnectedness that continues to inform historical understanding today.